Okay, Dagmar Munn, I'm recording now. So we're making this little video to share with people living with ALS because you and I have known each other virtually for about 2 years now. My name's Andrea Caban, for those of you who don't know me. And Dagmar reached out to me a couple of years ago because she heard about a play. You heard about a play that I made, and the play was posted on the ALS Association website, and it was about how I helped someone modify their accent in order to speak longer without the use of assistive technology. And so when I met you, and you being the author of Living Well with ALS, when you reached out to me, I said, why don't you give this a shot and let me know what you think? And so my question for you is, after using the Living Speech series and getting a little bit of speech and accent and vocal support from that, 2 years later, what do you think?
Well, I am still talking, and I am happy that I am able to communicate. I am always trying to improve, but I have learned a lot.
So of everything you've learned from the Living Speech series, what do you use more regular? What techniques do you use more regularly, and how can I help you refine them?
Well, right away, not reading. That was number one. No longer reading up here and reading lower.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, the shape of the lungs, the lower third of the lungs is where you're going to get the most capacity. And so panic breaths are never going to serve you. Do you ever use like a foam roller or something like that behind your on your spine to help kind of open up your breath like that?
I have a pillow
Yeah,
right there,
yeah,
and it helps me with my posture
yeah.
and opening.
Great, great. And so what else? What else are you using in the series, and how can I add some value?
Well, I have been reading and um talking, but I find a few um words are hard.
Okay.
Um, not letter K and um not X like six,
Six.
number six.
Okay, so the reason six is hard is because the sound, the second part of that word, the sounds are a K and an S.
Uh,
Right. So before we started this video, we were working on the K sound. And if you'll recall from the Living Speech series, I recommend instead of at the velum, at the soft spot of the roof of the mouth, you move it forward to the palate, the harder, the bone. So instead of k, 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 try ki, ki, ki. So your tongue is really arching up further forward in the mouth. So can you say can?
can,
Yeah.
can, can.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
soften the back of your neck so that the work isn't coming from here, right? We're really just challenging the tongue to go can, can, can.
can, can, can.
How does that feel?
Um, matter, yeah,
Good.
matter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's try now with an S, just so that we can test that skill. Let's say scan, scan,
Um,
scan.
can, can. I knew it in 2 parts. Can.
Yeah.
And
So let's try this. So if you were at the S part of scans, can you start to make the S and then bring the rest of your tongue up? As you're making the S, let's see.
can.
Yeah.
Can.
Yeah, so the thing with speech that's challenging, especially if you're dealing with ALS symptoms, is one challenging sound followed by another. We call them consonant clusters, right? And so if you can think about them as physical gestures, all right? So an S is here, and we're making the k sound further forward. If I can try to put my brain not to making the sounds, not to making k, but to changing the physical gesture, right? So again, there's always going to be a challenge there, but if you can think about it in terms of speech gesture rather than speech sounds, then you might be able to get just a little bit more flexibility there.
And yeah, rather than a sound, I am doing choreography.
That's exactly what you're doing. That's exactly what it is.
And
Yeah, I mean, that's what speech is. It is choreography, but it's so memorized and ingrained that, you know, we're like the most accomplished dancers in the world when it comes to speech because we don't have to think about it. Well, when you're dealing with challenges, you got to go back into the dance studio and think about the steps, right? You got to think about the steps and modify the steps based on what you can still do.
perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So now that we've got scan at the beginning of a word, let's try something more challenging like six. So what's happening with six is you're starting with a S, you're popping up to a K, and then you're going right back to the six with just one little teeny vowel in there. And so what's going to help, Dagmar, is if you keep your jaw a little bit higher. I know you're doing such a beautiful job of like opening your jaw and sending a lot of sound out, but I think it's going to be easier for your tongue to make those little movements, those quick back and forth movements, if you lessen the space that it has to move. So if you can kind of keep your jaw up a little bit higher like this, right? And so not open it up. You don't have to lock it, but you just have to keep it from opening so much, right? So if it's here, six. Try that. Take your time.
Six. Six. Six.
Now.
I am feeling. I feel the movement. Six.
Yeah.
Six.
Yeah.
Six. Yeah. I will work on it.
Yeah. Now think about, you know, that your tongue is slower than it was years ago, right? Right. And so if you just reduce the real estate that it has to move, then you might be able to find some more dexterity there. So keeping the jaw higher, it takes a little bit of practice, right? And it's very odd.
Six. Six. Six.
And let's just practice the at the end.
Six.
Yeah.
It is coming much slower. slowly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will work on it.
Okay.
Step,
Yeah.
step, step.
Is there anything else you want some tips about? Maybe I can
Mm.
imagine some other gestures that might be more useful for you.
Um, I find that I am talking and I get louder and I am unable to marry up and down. I am talking always monotone and I try to talk up, but it is weird.
Yeah. So you're talking about pitch variation and also volume variation? Like you hit one volume and it kind of stays right there? Yeah. Well, I gotta say, if you're hitting a certain volume and you're loud enough to be heard, that's a good thing, right? I think that hitting a volume is sometimes challenging for folks, you know?
Yeah,
So that means you've got enough breath to support phonation, to support voice, which is excellent. When it comes to pitch, that's harder. Um, uh, it would be useful, I think, if you got one of those, you know, those bobo straws, or what do you, bobo tea or bubble tea, big
uh,
straw, like a smoothie straw, something like that, and to hum in it.
oh,
Just like that. So giving yourself just a little bit of a pitch variety there. Now it's going to take some breath capacity to do that. So you only do it as long as it feels good to, and then take a breath, take a rest, and do a little bit more. But just warming up a little bit of pitch variety with a straw. A larger straw is going to be easier than like a cocktail straw. You know, a cocktail straw, it's going to be even more challenging to get sound out.
right.
But that can be something for you to play around with a little bit of pitch variety.
I I find my voice is low.
Yeah.
And in the videos, they you were teaching high, talking
Yeah.
high, but I cannot do high
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah. A higher voice, which is what I was recommending in the videos, and something like very nasally, right? Because a lot of people living with ALS have a more nasal quality to the voice anyway, right? And so the idea is to capitalize on that a little bit, because a more nasally sound is going to create more volume without more effort. So you can use that voice only when you really need it. You know, only when you're
Ah,
struggling to be heard, you know, when you need a little bit more volume, but you don't have enough energy to create more volume, then you can try to up basically what you're doing is you're bringing your larynx up a little bit, and you're, you know, making kind of a little kitty voice.
oh, right. That way I am talking up here.
Yeah, yeah. So try,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, try up there.
I am up here.
Yeah.
That works also. Wow.
Yeah. So that can be an option. So my recommendation to you, Dagmar, and to anybody who wants to play around with their voice to see, you know, when they have more dexterity, where they have a little bit more wiggle room, is to have like a handful of strategies, right?
Mhm.
A handful of strategies for whatever mood and whatever physical condition you're in, because your energy ebbs and flows. Your voice will ebb and flow during the day. I'm sure that's true for you, right? And
Yeah.
so using that voice, that higher voice, when you need a little extra oomph is useful. Using a really breathy voice if you're feeling tired and you need to add a little bit more air through the vocal folds and you need to phonate a little bit less, that's another option. So, you know, picking and choosing the ones in the series that feel like, oh yeah, I could use that for that. And so instead of, oh crap, I don't have voice today, or oh crap, I can't communicate right now, you kind of bypass that panic mode and you're like, okay, which strategy can I use? I'm gonna try this one. Let's see if this one works. I'm gonna bring my jaw up and my pitch up and see if it helps.
You know, a lot of it is giving permission to sound different.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that you sound different every day anyway. I sound different every day anyway, but because you're facing symptoms, you sound different every day. I'm sure your voice and your relationship to your voice is different than it was 5 years ago, certainly, right? And so why not play? Why not play and change consciously the way you sound, so that you can continue to make sound and communicate without gadgets as long as you possibly can.
That is exactly what everyone with ALS needs to know. They can play with the voice.
Yeah, the people that come to me to do private coaching, or if they're not sure about Living Speech series, and I give them like a sample video or something, the folks that are not flexible with their own vocal identity are not going to be good candidates for this kind of work. But the folks who don't care really how they sound, so long as they can sound and can have a playful spirit about it, like you, right? So you're not so fixed to sounding a certain way, then those are the folks who actually gain a lot of value out of it. It's the same spirit with which I train actors, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I find that trying is the only way to know. Try.
Yeah. Yeah.
Try. Try.
Try.
Try. Anything
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah. Yeah. And also just spending some time in proactive practice helps, right? So just trying something and not getting super duper fixed on whether or not it works, but seeing if it does work, and putting your energy into something that's proactive and positive.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
And it has been a help for me.
Great. Well, you know, the reason I reached out to you and asked you if you wanted a little help here in a little mini coaching is because every time you tell folks about Living Speech series on Living Well with ALS, I get a number of folks who come to me. And so I just want to say thank you for that. And your voice helps me help other people. And I'm so grateful for that, number one. But number two, I think it was like 2 years ago where you suggested I run a special for World Voice Day. Well, tomorrow's World Voice Day. And I thought, what a cool thing to do to make this little video for folks and share it with folks. And also, I'm going to offer half off the series for the rest of the month. Because I also think that now with everyone being sheltered in place, or most folks being sheltered in place, it might be a good time to pick up a practice with your caregivers, because everybody's stuck at home now, you know? And so
Yeah.
some of the exercises you need to, like, especially stretching the breath, right? It's stretching the muscles of breathing. You need somebody to help you to do that. And so I thought this would be a good time for that.
That is very nice. Thank you.
Thank you again. And you should reach out to me anytime you have a question. I'm happy to be of service to you anytime, Dagmar.
Okay.
So I'm gonna, in this YouTube video, I'm gonna post the links to the discount for the web series, for the Living Speech series, and then also a link to my play in case anybody wants to see the
Oh
play.
yeah. I will be sure and share it with the Facebook and my blog.
Thank you. Thank you, friend. All right, I'm gonna stop our recording now and then we can say goodbye as friends. Where's my recording? Here we are.